Good afternoon, Elite 100. Great to see you here. We got a lot of people traveling today. If you guys could throw your cameras on, that'd be amazing. I want to send some special love. I know Ara's going to watch this later. Out to Ara and his family and his beautiful daughter having a 3-day wedding event this weekend. I know Ara's all busy up in that this week. So I want to send some special love to Ara. Why don't we start with some wins, and we could probably each get one off here. Mr. Markarian, what's a good win?
Well, last week I signed the contract and I secured a $2 million job.
That's
And
insane. I love it.
it's gonna be awesome. It's for us it's a big deal because it's a fast turnaround. It's a $2,274,000 job in a 6 to 8 month time frame, which is insane. So we're really perfecting our skill and getting our stuff together, and couldn't have come at a better time. So I'm very excited about that.
I love that. I've been praying for you too, but I know like some of the other things going on. So that's
Yeah,
absolutely
it kind of balances that out a little bit. Still trying to sell a beautiful house if anybody wants to buy it.
Well, I keep putting energy to that. I do. I put that in my
Yeah.
prayers as well. So
That's what I thought you were going to say. That's why I was so excited.
I know. I thank you, Val. Someday it's okay. I'm good. I'm still good. We can't. We're in a good place.
good. I love it. Kevin, what about you, bud? What's a good win?
Yeah, I'm starting to step into more of the, I guess, capital raising presentations, and I got connected with a platform called Fractional, where you can pretty much work with fractional investors on deals.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so trying to test that out, see if that can help bring more awareness to what we're working on. We got that presentation this Thursday, so it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Very cool. Very cool. Love it. Nelson, what about you, bud? What's a good win? Hey, Blake, how you doing?
Just got back from Industrial Marketing Summit in Austin, Texas, and made a lot of good prospect contacts, figured out how to communicate our company's value better to our prospects, and learned that it's time to really start doing some brand awareness. So it was eye-opening, awesome, met some great people, had a lot of fun.
Very cool. Very cool. Blake, what about you? What's a good win? Oh, you're muted, bud.
I said, you're just you're putting people on the spot more these days.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I got that prepared. Let's see. So we are just about to kind of close out the subscription process and capital collection for our Access Loan Fund, where we're buying already originated loans from my brother's company, Sunday. They normally sell them to Wall Street, but there's no reason that they can't just sell them to the folks in Access. So we raised a fund. Everybody's kind of committing their capital right now, and we've got a pool of loans that we're ready to buy that's going to be generating low double digits for everybody who participates. So we're pretty stoked on that.
Awesome. Is that something that you want to present in the Elite, or is that Access only, or?
We probably wouldn't have been the worst idea to offer it up to Elite. We're to the point right now where we probably can't continue to solicit investments, and we kind of have to close things down. But the next iteration, it's going to be the kind of thing where it's close-ended. We do it for as long as it takes for all the loans to pay off, basically 18 months on the long end, and then we'll do it again, most likely. So at that point, we could absolutely do a bigger one and invite Elite folks to participate.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to flip over to the Mastermind principles. We'll read those.
I'm trying to figure out how to get my camera on, and I think I have to shut my computer off. So I'm going to bug out and reboot everything.
All right. I just asked you, see if that works. I see you trying to pop on. I just did it on my end.
Okay. Cannot start. I've had this problem before. I got to shut down, and I'll be back in a couple minutes, guys.
All right. We're just going to read the principles, and we'll see you back on.
Goodbye.
No worries. All right, Mastermind principles. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this blessed day. Oh, Jeff's coming in. And for allowing us to come together in a spirit of harmony to mastermind for the benefit of all of our mastermind members, our families, and for the good of mankind. We ask that you bless this mastermind group today and every day forward. We release ourselves to the mastermind because we are strong when we have others to help us. We believe the combined intelligence of the mastermind creates a wisdom far beyond our own. We understand that we will more easily create positive results in our lives We were open to looking at ourselves, our challenges, and opportunities from another's point of view. We decide to release our desire totally and trust to the mastermind, and we are open to accepting new possibilities. We forgive. We forgive ourselves for mistakes we have made. We also forgive others who have wronged us in the past so we can move into the future with a clean slate. We ask God and our mastermind family to hear what we really want, our goals, our dreams, and our desires, and we hear our mastermind partners supporting us in our fulfillment. We accept. We know, relax, and accept, believing that the working power of the mastermind will respond to our every need. We are grateful knowing this is so. Dedication and covenant. We now have a covenant in which it is agreed that the mastermind shall supply us with an abundance of all things necessary to live a success-filled and happy life. We dedicate ourselves to be of maximum service to the world and our fellow human beings, to live in a manner that will set the highest example for others to follow, and to remain an open channel of God's will. We go forth with the spirit of enthusiasm, excitement, and expectancy. Before we get going, Mr. Rubin, I wanted to get an update. Obviously, last week you weren't able to be on the Vrolio presentation, but I think it went really well. And I just wanted to get some feedback from you on how you think that went. And
yeah, I mean, sorry I couldn't join, some family stuff going on, but thanks everyone for joining that or watching the recording. I think they were pleased. They have a bunch of commitments. They have other commitments too. So they're extremely close to their number for soft commitments, and the data, I mean, they're great. So, you know, they want to add mid and long-term rentals, and when they do, it's going to be a incredible product on top of what it is already. So,
awesome.
but yeah, all good. They appreciated everything, and love meeting everyone, and they want to join the elite as soon as they can. So
yeah, no, they're great people. I think they bring a lot of value too, so that'll be a good addition for sure. If anybody didn't see that, it's in the WhatsApp group. It's really, really interesting real estate AI machine learning software that I think is going to revolutionize the industry. So it's really cool. A little bit of housekeeping. You guys have probably seen everywhere. My team's been peppering everybody with emails and in the groups. Next Monday night at 8 o'clock Eastern, we're allowing people to invite for free friends, family, neighbors, coworkers to our lesson 1 goal setting and thinking and results. So some of you have been through this a few times, and some of you have people that have kind of been curious about what it is. So we figured we'd open it up and actually allow people to come live to that lesson 1. So love to see you guys there. Val, I think you have a link to drop in the chat. If you guys do want to invite anybody that's been kind of looking from the outside in, feel free to do that. It should be amazing. So, all right, I'm going to flip over to Mr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural. So this is a book I've read a few times, and I don't know if you guys have ever read it before, and you know what your thoughts are. But this is another way to look at what we're talking about. Right? This is metaphysics. This is understanding sort of the quantum mechanics, quantum physics side of the deal. And I think Joe does a very good job at looking at sort of the scientific side of this. And as always in the elite, we always suggest that, you know, harvest the good, forgive the rest. It's another way to look at things. So the difference between this book and like a Neville Goddard is, you know, I don't want to read like the whole thing cover to cover, right? I want to highlight points because there's a lot of stories in here. And I've gone ahead and done that. So this first story talks about this woman, Anna, who is going along life perfectly fine, doing well, married, and out of a freak incident or a freak occurrence, her husband committed suicide, like really out of the blue. And it just threw her into a tizzy, an absolute, a chain of events that just led her to be really broken down and really going through some harsh stuff. So I highlighted this first part because it talks about living in stress, right? How stress hormones take over. It says, from a scientific standpoint, living in stress is living in survival. When we perceive a stressful circumstance that threatens us in some way, one for which we cannot predict or control the outcome. I think we've all, as entrepreneurs, we've been through this. Eric, this reminds me of something you're going through right now a little bit, right? It's things that it's like we feel out of control. So it's a primitive nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system turns on, and the body mobilizes an enormous amount of energy in response to the stressor. This is the flight or fight syndrome, right? Psychologically, the body is automatically tapping into the resources it will need to deal with the current danger. Then it goes on to describe, the pupils dilate, so we can see better. All the energy goes into the fight or flight mode. And it talks about like the immune system initially dials up and then dials down as an adrenaline and cortisol floods the muscles, providing a rush of energy to either escape or fend off the stressor. Circulation moves out of our rational forebrain and is instead relied into our hindbrain. And I highlighted this in blue. It says, so we have less capacity to think creatively and instead rely more on our instinct to instantly react. So I wanted to ask you guys, if you think back in your lives to a situation that was very, very either intense or very stressful, do you guys have scenarios where this has kind of happened to you that you can recall? Anybody have something? The part that comes to me is like, when we get in this mode, we have less capacity to think creatively. And instead we rely more on our instincts.
Well, I mean, I used to, whenever we'd have client issues years ago, as soon as the client had a perception of what was going on, I would immediately react. Cortisol would kick in, and I would literally react so emotionally with our team, like it was the end of the world thing, right?
Oh.
Before getting the full story, you know what I mean? This is way before, hearing you, a couple years ago, flow like water.
Mhm.
And so it's looking back, it's amazing how I used to just react, go to stress mode without even knowing the whole picture. You start to make all these assumptions, and then everything this book talks about right here, the fight or flight, all the bad stuff happens. So as soon as I started to learn all right, no, I don't react when I hear something anymore. Even it could be horrible. It could be a client canceling. I don't react. Like, all right, let's figure out what's going on. Let's get the whole picture, and then we can figure out, but this too shall pass. It's a wholly total different mindset for being aware of stressors, handling it immediately, and knowing that you have a way to process it.
Mm. Yeah, this is similar to me. I mean, back in my younger days, I definitely used to be a lot more reactive. And when we get reactive, we tend to put gas on the fire, right? And compound the problem. Kevin, what about you? Can you think back to, you're a pretty calm dude. I think you kind of have that demeanor, but can you think back to your younger days or any situation where, something happened in the environment and it caused you to, kind of get in this frame?
Yeah, I mean, in past relationships, I when I was younger, I think there was a lot of those aspects where as soon as you get into more of like an emotional state and emotional banter, words come out that aren't necessarily talking about the original problem. So that's like the first thing that pops into mind. But even, a more recent analogy is when you get into an energy state where it feels like you have to make decisions that are challenging to survive. Like, I think the reactive state's more about like a primitive and a primal state survival versus stepping to a place where like you're calm, collected, and you have the space to like think about like, okay, how bad is this problem actually right now versus what kind of solutions are available? Because focusing in on the negativity, the challenges, there's a time and a place for it, but oftentimes it's not actually productive to focus on that. It's like, okay, we got to react right now. What are the resources at hand to actually get through this dilemma? Because there's always a solution. It's usually time, money, connections, and resources. So there's always a solution. But all too often, if you get into this reactive state, then it can be a spiral downward versus okay, this is a hurdle we got to get through right now.
Yeah, and it's I like what you said there too. And it's I guess the reality is there always is a solution, right? Bob used to say there's no such thing as a problem or a challenge without a solution, but it's can we get into the mindset and can we kind of look at all options to come up with that? So Scott, I'd be curious, with you guys just had an exit, and I'm sure that was a roller coaster, right? Did you guys have any scenarios where this type of stuff kicked in, where it was like there was just some overwhelming environmental stimuluses that you had to kind of process?
Yeah. With that, yeah, I mean, owning a business, I think all of us that, are in the matrix that have, investments and all that type of stuff, I think we definitely develop a thicker skin to everyday life stuff. Not saying that other people's problems aren't important. It's important to them and at their scale. But when you get overwhelmed with so many things in your business that happen on a day-to-day basis, as some of the other guys were saying, you kind of become not numb to it, but you're not so it doesn't ruin your day as much. You figure out that this is part of business, and then you figure out a way to overcome that situation and come up with a plan to prevent it from happening next. We've always owning my own business and then selling it and everything like that. I found a very good way to, especially having it not in my house anymore at a location, to break that. So when I go home, I separate my business to my personal life. And that is a challenge I feel with a lot of business owners that we talk to. A lot of people take that home and they let it interfere too much in their personal lives. So if you can find a way to break that, whether it's a hobby, peaceful place that you got to go to or do something to break your cycle to kind of reset you for the night or that weekend or something like that. I think that's something important that somebody should do.
No, that's a really good point, especially like you said, I didn't think of that. It's letting your business flow into the other parts of your life in a non-productive way, right? That's a pretty good point. So this case, if you guys have read this, is pretty extreme, right? It talks about, her husband committing suicide and her kind of reliving it. It says all of us are built for dealing with short-term bursts of stress. When the event is over, the body normally returns to the balance within hours, increasing its energy levels and restoring its vital resources. It says, but when the stress doesn't end within hours, the body never returns to balance. In truth, no organism in nature can endure living in emergency mode for extended periods of time. I highlighted this in blue here, right? Turning on the cascade of stress chemicals by thought alone. That's what she was doing. Has anybody here ever had a situation where something so traumatic has happened that you find yourself reliving it? Something from the past? You had something, Scott?
Traumatic, to me would be like stuff that runs through my head, obviously loved ones that I miss.
Yeah.
Their anniversaries come up or something like that. You drive by, you notice something that you used to do with each other. That type of stuff is like a trigger.
Absolutely. And what Joe's saying here, and I didn't realize this myself until I read this much deeper, is we can actually get into the state where your body is literally reliving that experience, like from a chemical point of view. Now, the stressors, all the turmoil, all the past. So it's important to, that's why I think it's important to study books like this. We learn more about the mind-body connection. It says here, every day Anna relived that event over and over in her mind. What she didn't realize is that her body did not know the difference between the original event that created the stress response and the memory of the event. This was kind of like a holy cow kind of moment when I highlighted this. So which created the same emotions as the real life experience all over again. It says Anna was producing the same chemistry in her brain and body as if the event was actually happening again and again. Subsequently, her brain was continuously wiring the event into her memory bank, and her body was emotionally experiencing the same chemicals from the past at least 100 times a day. Like, this is absolutely crazy. By repeatedly recalling the experience, she was unintentionally anchoring her brain and body to the past. Kevin?
Yeah, on this topic, it's for better or for worse, I'm able to forget the past very quickly and move into the present and future. And these couple sentences really hit the nail on the head. As soon as you put your mind into a state of something that's already occurred, and it's not in a process of actually improving from that experience, you are now just living in a past experience that can't be changed. And the body's a powerful organism where, you know, the chemicals that you produce are the chemicals that are universal for any type of emotion and feeling. So this is spot on. Like when she thinks about it, she releases chemicals. Her body actually now places her into that experience that is no longer happening. And the best is to like break that pattern and realize the trends, and then also try to think forward of, you know, how can you grow from that experience?
Yeah, well said, well said. Well, let me ask you guys this, because, you know, this happens as we're going through current things too, right? What are some of the things that you guys personally do when you're in, you know, a very, very, what would be like a stressful situation? And probably most of this is going to be business induced, although it could be family, and, you know, it could be relatives and loved ones as well. But what are some of the mechanisms you guys have for getting out of that headspace?
Deep breaths, breath work.
Deep breath work. You talking about like Wim Hof or like the box breathing, or?
Just, you know, the simplest what I've heard, because I've tried a bunch of them, and there's some that are more complicated, but I've heard that if you take 7 deep controlled breaths, it basically resets your nervous system to, you know, remove the stressors, you know what I mean? To get away from stress mode and get into more relaxed mode. So 7 deep breaths, like 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, 7 times. And so keep it simple.
Yeah, it's like a pattern interrupt, huh? Jeremy, I'd be curious. You're a very intense physical individual. Some of the things you do are just like, you know, David Goggins type stuff. What pattern interrupts do you do if you find yourself in a very intenseful, like stressful situation?
Very similar to what Nelson said, because I actually came on commented a moment ago. This was one of the books that helped me a lot with a pattern that I kept falling back into in my nervous system. I overdosed on a medicine journey about 5 years ago, and fell into a loop that would occur over and over and over. And so it was a very negative experience for me. And so I had to realize and really work through the brain piece of it. And usefully, what I try to do currently is, just like Nelson said, take some really deep breaths and then try to make the connections to why I personally am experiencing either the anxiety or the fear or that nervous system like becoming discombobulated. And I go, this happened in the past. This is the current situation that's happening right now, and those two are linked. And when I create that link, it helps me go, oh, that's why I'm experiencing this challenge, or that's why I'm experiencing this palpitations in my heart or chest tightening, anxiety type of feeling. And it helps me realize what's going on logically. And then I just breathe through it and carry on. It all comes back to breath, right? The Indians and yogis used to say that it's not the amount of years that are predetermined at birth, but the amount of breaths that we have.
Oh, wow.
Predetermined. Yeah.
That makes sense. I wasn't aware. Are you able to elaborate? Was there a traumatic incident that triggered, you know, the medical? Was it like an injury or something, or?
No, just me pushing my body to the limit and taking a lot way too many heroic doses of mushrooms.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a psychedelic trip, so it was a little bit heavy, but yeah, again, it was a beautiful experience and it happened for me, and it gave me so much clarity and insight on the other side. But it was a deep hole for a little while.
Well, you and Steve Jobs have a lot in common then. There's a lot of no, seriously, there's a lot of wildly intelligent people in history that have used psychedelics as part of their imaginative journey. You'd be surprised how many, you know, like top performers in the world have gone down that road, expanding the mind through, you know, through substances. So you're not alone.
It can give you different perspectives on things that happen to you, for sure. post trip.
So what advice do you guys have? I'm thinking of Mr. Markarian. Like, obviously you have this one situation that you're pushing through. It weighs on, you know, it comes up probably every day, right? But then you have all these other amazing things. You got health, wealth, love, happiness, other deals, business, right? You're like, you know, there's 1,000 things that are going well, but I'm guessing that one thing, you know, rears its head up, right?
It does. It's 100 times a day.
It-
But it's this group is like therapy to me. It's the reading, it's TIR. I'm doing it like 6 full rotations a week, literally
Oh,
still
nice.
doing it.
So, okay, so you're flooding your brain with good content, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, every minute I get, hitting the gym, try staying in the regiment,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have an interesting thing that I just thought of. We just bought my wife a new E63 Mercedes, and the whole buyer's remorse
Mhm.
mindset, right? Just about every time I've ever bought a vehicle, I've had a little bit of buyer's remorse set in, right? This is the first time. As soon as it started set, I'm like, no, this is earned, right?
Mhm.
This is awesome. I'm not gonna experience buyer's remorse at all. So it was recognizing buyer's remorse starting to fit in. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna have it at all. This is awesome, right? This has been a dream car for a few years, right? She saw Beth Dutton drive it on what do you call it, Yellowstone, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so she put it in her head she wanted it, so we got it. So it was a moment, right? So you can't, when you put something in your head, you achieve it and you get it. You can't have a buyer's remorse for something like that you achieve, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, you can if you're not careful. That's the thing, right? That's the body being in a reactive state to past programming.
Yep.
It's exactly what we're talking about. So the reality is, yeah, you absolutely can if we don't catch it.
Yep.
And that's why I'm pulling out of you guys here, like some of the things that you do, so we can share them and have a toolbox of these pattern interrupts. Mr. Gullickson, you are one of the most calmest of people that I've ever met in my life. Have you ever experienced any of this stuff, or is it just not in your world?
Of course I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I do stay calm. And what I do to cope is I go outside and go for a walk or therapeutically work in the yard, which I love to do.
Mm.
Just get outside and breathe some air. Yeah. And do something do something with my body, right? That's what I do.
That's really good. Yeah, connecting to nature, getting grounded. Some people call it, they'll actually take their shoes off and get grounded. I don't know if you do that, but connecting to nature, that's something that a lot of us don't do. I mean, I work from home. I'm in the office all day, every day, right? So it's like purposefully getting outside and just getting out of your head and into nature.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good thing.
I'll start the chainsaw up or lawnmower or some power tool and just
Power tool.
shut my brain off and just, smell the smells and breathe the air. So
Good deal. I love it. Nelson, can you take over reading here, and we'll just elaborate on some of the things that are highlighted at
So
the top.
when they freeze into a pattern, start there.
Up at emotions.
Okay, emotions. Emotions are the chemical consequences or feedback of past experiences. As our senses record incoming information from the environment, clusters of neurons organize into networks. When they freeze into a pattern, the brain makes a chemical that is then sent throughout the body. That chemical is called an emotion. We remember events better when we can remember how they feel. The stronger the emotional quotient from any event, either good or bad, the stronger the change in our internal chemistry. When we notice a significant change inside of us, the brain pays attention to whoever or whatever is causing the change outside of us. And it takes a snapshot of the outer experience. That's called a memory.
Why don't we stop? So this is something, believe it or not, I've read this book many times, and this just really solidified for me, like the physiology of what an emotion is, because my perspective has always been like an emotion is only on the sort of invisible, spiritual, vibrational plane. What I'm reading here, what I think is that an emotion is actually a chemical reaction when the body comes into play. And a memory is also a chemical reaction that's stored. Is that how you guys are reading this?
Yeah.
Because to me was like, it was kind of like a next level of awareness, understanding between the spiritual, the intellectual, and the physical, or the mind-body connection.
Yeah, when you start talking about things like this, as this book goes on and it really gets into this on a deeper level. And I mentioned this like probably a year ago on one of these calls, where you get so incredibly fast. We're electrical, chemical beings that are so highly intelligently designed that, you know, you get so fascinated. Beyond fascination, there's comfort that you're created by something so magnificent, right?
Mm. Yeah, and we talk about rewiring the subconscious mind through repetition, right? And that's something I'm obviously very versed in, and we're all trained in. But what I'm seeing here, why I highlighted this whole area, is that it's not just hypothetically rewiring. It's like literally the neural pathways of your brain get wired for new programs. So this is like super fascinating to me too. Let's see, Mr. Gullickson, can you take over at therefore?
Sure. Therefore, the memory of an event can become branded neurologically in the brain, and that scene becomes frozen in the time in our gray matter, just as it did for Anna. The combination of various people or objects at a particular time and place from that stressful experience is etched in our neural architecture as a holographic image. That's how we create a long-term memory. Therefore, the experience becomes imprinted in the neural circuitry, and the emotion is stored in the body. And that's how our past becomes our biology. In other words, when we experience a traumatic event, we tend to think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and we tend to feel chemically within the boundaries of the emotions from the event. So our entire state of being, how we think and how we feel, becomes biologically stuck in the past. Should I keep going?
Oh, sure, yeah.
As you can imagine, Anna was feeling a rush of negative emotions, tremendous sadness, pain, victimization, grief, guilt, shame, despair, anger, hatred, frustration, resentment, shock, fear, anxiety, worry, overwhelm, anguish, hopelessness, powerlessness, isolation, loneliness, disbelief, and betrayal. And none of those emotions dissipated quickly. As Anna analyzed her life within the emotions of the past, she kept suffering more and more because she couldn't think greater than how she constantly felt. Since emotions are a record of the past, she was thinking in the past, and every day she felt worse. As a psychotherapist, she could rationally and intellectually understand what was happening to her, but her insights couldn't get beyond her suffering.
Mm.
A lot of emotions. They went
Well,
on and on and on.
I know when you think so, what I'm understanding from this too is like each one of these is a chemical response, and it's also like wired in as a function of the gray matter in the brain. And like you said, there's so many different ones there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's like just insane how many negative things go on in something like that.
Yeah.
Does anybody have something in the past that kind of triggers this level? I don't know if anybody here does. I know certainly in our other groups, when we were talking about some of this, there was some things. Does anybody here have something that they can get into this state from a past incident? If not, we're very fortunate.
Well, Brian, I don't have an answer to that exact question, but something that led me to think was something that Tony Robbins talks a lot about, and it's kind of a fundamental thing that I know he repeats a lot in his various programs, is the past does not equal the present, and the past does not equal the future.
Mhm.
I'm hoping at some point, because I'm way behind where you guys are from a reading standpoint on this book. I'm hoping there's some way to prove Tony true, because what I'm hearing right now is that this is sort of chemically ingrained, it's neurologically ingrained, and what you're experiencing in the moment is very much a product of the emotional state that you sort of fostered at some past moment and the chemicals that resulted. So it seems like it's very physiologically sort of wired, and that I'm hoping there's some rewiring that goes on later in the book.
Yeah, no, it definitely goes on to explain in great detail. But that's why I love this book. It's not just it doesn't just highlight things, it actually gives systems and processes for rewiring that stuff. And Thinking in Results does that too. It's different, right? You know, in Elite 100, we get much deeper into the mindset through books like this and through Neville Goddard and things like Thomas Troward. So And I love these sessions too. I love exploring this stuff with you guys. So it's, to me, it's one of the highest things we do. Mr. Dugan, you want to take over from here? And at any point, if somebody wants to interject, just interject.
People in her life started treating her as the person who had lost her husband, and that became her new identity. She associated her memories and feelings with the reason she was in her present state. When anyone asked her why she felt so bad, she told the story of suicide, each time reliving the pain, anguish, and suffering over again. All along, Anna kept firing the same circuits in her brain and reproducing the same emotions, conditioning her brain and body further into the past. Every day she was thinking, acting, and feeling as if the past were still alive. And since how we think, how we act, and how we feel is our personality, Anna's personality was completely created by the past. From a biological standpoint, in repeatedly telling the narrative of her husband's suicide, Anna literally couldn't get beyond what had happened.
So I think there's something going on here to kind of reflect on, right? Because not only did this traumatic incident happen, but she was sort of not purposely, she was involuntarily reliving it. And she wasn't aware. People like, well, how you doing? She would reflect like her whole life was this incident, as opposed to trying to minimize it.
Yeah, and great reading, Kevin. And what I liked about that, and the gentleman that just spoke, when he was talking about the Tony Robbins piece. So this particular paragraph is really powerful because it uses that word identity. And what happens is a lot of individuals that I've noticed is you have an identity towards something. And when that identity shifts, everything begins to change because you have to adapt that identity. So a name change, just you used the term David Goggins earlier, Brian. I'm a big fan of Goggins, obviously. But when he is doing normal day-to-day things, he's David Goggins.
Yeah.
When he has to go out and do something insane, he's just Goggins. And so he creates a new identity when he has to go do something hard because that's just what that identity does. That's just what that person does. Yeah. And so if you identify as someone who is wealthy, you're going to become more wealthy if wealth is part of your identity. If your identity is struggle, you're going to have more struggle in your life. And so we are what our identities are. And that's what I hear from that. And when people get asked the question, oh, what's new in your life? And you just go right to your story of how hard everything is, how struggling everything is, and how awful everything is. Well, that's going to be your identity. And it's always going to suck for you.
I wasn't aware of what he does with that. It's like a switch.
Yep.
I love it.
Well,
I think it's interesting.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. That sometimes when you hit a traumatic event in your life, it's a shaking point to pivot you in one direction or another. In this particular story, it brought her into a hole where, now everything she associated with was that traumatic event. And the power of the body, to live emotionally is actually like living a full life. The range of having love and anguish and passion, and it gives you a full life experience. But in this instance, the sorrow, the sadness, the suffering became who she was, and she gave those experiences life, and it lived in her. I listened through it, and obviously as we go through it, she created a lot of turmoil in her life because of this energy that she generated. And the programming that she didn't choose, but it happened to her. So, yeah, it's crazy. I haven't heard of any stories like this before, but to put things into perspective, us as business owners, we're literally all we do is solve problems. And your problems are just, sometimes they feel like big problems, sometimes they feel like small problems, sometimes the small problems feel like big problems. But if you really take a step back, it's the life that we chose, and it's how you frame that perspective challenge relative to the other challenges you have, where it's like, hey, you'll get through it, and it'll just take a little bit more time. Maybe it'll hurt a little bit more, but then there's always more growth to come in. And that's the big aspect for me. It's like, hey, there's a lot to grow into. There's a lot more potential going forward. So I try to look at the little problems and put into perspective as to like, hey, this is part of the journey.
I actually love what you're saying there, because how quick do you get into that mode is what I'm curious. Like when something happens? Do you get there quickly? Like, wait a minute, no, this is happening for me, not to me. There's growth. It's not, you know, it may seem bad now, but so how fast do you kind of move into that mode?
It would take a lot to like really shift me out of like a pretty even keeled state. I think nowadays more I get frustrated with people who are really ignorant. Like every once in a while, like somebody's like so ignorant that I was like, man, like spending time with you is really frustrating because we have to like raise our consciousness a little bit higher. But that's been like in random situations. But for the most part, I try to stay pretty even keeled, realizing like there's a lot of blessings to focus on and a lot to be grateful for. Health is a core foundation.
Mhm.
And if your health isn't good, you have time. You have the time to continue to keep growing and keep building.
So one thing I want you guys to ponder, like think about this exact scenario, and maybe not business, but you know, imagine if your significant other did what Anna's husband did. Like that level of an event. I don't believe anybody here's gone through something at that level. Maybe you have, but that's how I'm trying to get into like the mindset of this story. Because I think a lot of us are relating to business, right? And not necessarily to like a much bigger traumatic event, you know. And I don't stay there long. It's something to ponder. This is kind of where my mind goes when I read stuff like this. It's like most of, you
How
know,
traumatic do you want?
whatever you're willing to share.
Well, growing up in was it 6th grade? We went to go and we built BMX bike tracks as kids.
Mhm.
And
That too.
I found my best friend dead. He stabbed himself in the leg with a pair of shears going to do the bike path and bled out.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
An accident?
Yeah, it was an accident.
Holy cow.
It took a long time to get over.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's such a freak accident. That's
Yeah.
and you're so young too. So does that still come up for you, or has it just been so long ago?
No, it still does. And on my way to my parents' house all the time, we drive past his gravesite. So yeah.
Oh, number one, I'm sorry to hear that. That's especially at that age.
Mm.
What if anything do you do or have you done to, you know, not let it be like all consuming?
Well, back then it was a lot more tougher because everybody kind of deals with stuff differently, you know. So a lot of kids were making fun of him. He was kind of he wasn't like a huge heavy set kid, but they were saying like, oh, you know, they would make jokes about him or something like
Wow.
that. It was too big to ride the bike. That's why he fell, so on and so forth. So, and I know people deal with stress even today. You talk to people deal with grief differently from one person to the next. Some people take, you know, a joking matter and, you know, they try to remember all the good times, and other people take the sad and they listen to sad music and that's how they cope with it. So each person's different in their own way. So, but yeah, it was a challenging time. Still think about it a lot.
Yeah. Well,
Then you
sorry.
fast forward in my life, and then we were at a party. We were all 21, and our best friend dove into a pool and broke his neck, and he's a quadriplegic now. And we still talk to him and hang out with him, do a lot of events with him. My brother Jeff actually pulled him out of the pool when we were at the party.
Wow.
So
We had something similar. I say Laura had one of her very best friends, like not that long ago, same thing. Having fun, dove into a pool, but died.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know, like I said, it was one of her best friends. It was really close. I knew him, you know, amazing guy, just absolutely amazing, but not anywhere near the level of what she did. And yeah, it still comes up. It still comes up, sure. But I think the one thing she does that I see is she goes towards the good times. Like all the good times, all the impact, all the people. He was a physical fitness trainer, just a great, ball of sunshine, just an amazing person. So
yeah.
well, thanks for sharing that. I think that definitely helps. Scott, do you want to take over at the top here?
Where is it? Sorry.
Find it right at the top. She would have to.
All right. Sorry.
No worries.
She would have to pay off significant debts that she had previously been aware of, and she didn't have the money to even begin. Not surprisingly, even more emotional, physiologically, and mental stress began to add up. Anna's mind went from in circles, constantly flooded with questions. How will I take care of our children? How will all of us deal with trauma in our future? How will it affect our lives? Why did my husband leave without saying goodbye to me? Why could I not know that he was so unhappy? Did I fail as a wife? How could he leave me with 2 young children, and how will I manage to raise them myself?
But the reason
Don't-
I highlighted this is because this to me kind of goes into like thinking in the results, like paradigms. When something happens, like the automatic response of sort of the questions like where our mind goes, right? And you know, we've been born into a society of ignorance, right? Grade school, high school, college. Until we start studying at a high level, it's very easy for our minds to kind of go down this negative path, which is what hers did here. So this reminds me more of like traditional thinking and results paradigm training, where we're programmed to look for the negative and what did I do wrong, and you know, how did I fail, and all these things that were compounding her problem. And Mr. Marcaron, I was curious, you know, the real estate situation you got going on. Does any of this happen for you? Do you get into like negativity about yourself?
Yeah, you question everything, you know, what did I do to deserve this? I thought I was a nice guy, you know,
Yeah.
those things, but I understand that there's a cause and effect, in every obstacle, there's in that obstacle or issue, in lies a solution, keep learning moments, and I definitely, I'm acknowledging a lot of that. Well, you know,
Yeah, it's easy to do, isn't it?
yeah, it's easy to fall into the negative parts of everything.
Well, especially the one you said, it's like, wait a minute, I'm a nice guy, I treat people
Yeah.
well. Like, why is
Yeah.
this happening, right?
Yeah.
Jeff, I saw you, Mr. Rubin, I saw you laugh and shake your head a little bit. Do you have a
No, I just agree 100% with Eric. It's tough. I always, I go into situations like I'm working on deals now that are awesome, and I hope they work out. They're like, some of the things are like very not over my head, but involve people who are significantly more success, bigger than me, and it's like, why should I be a part of this deal, and like, will it get done when they're doing other things that are huge and awesome? Why should this thing that I'm involved with them get done? Just, but that I just try and work as hard as I can, and hopefully it happens.
Well, that's what our paradigms do, right? We can start to look at it. But one thing I can tell you, I know some of the rooms you're getting in, you wouldn't be there if you weren't supposed to be there. The one thing I see with you is I believe you vastly and greatly undervalue yourself. I've known you for a while now. You and I've spent some pretty good time together, and I know the interactions and some of the things you're doing. So, part of that is like lesson 6 in thinking results. You might want to go back and like burn that one into your brain. It's more about self-image. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like the way we see you is probably a lot different than the way you see yourself. I think about I think about this master of the universe, this master connected, like you're an idea guy. The ideas spin off you like crazy. Sometimes it's like, holy shit, bro. Like you're an idea machine, so you're a visionary, right? And it's just more about getting teams of doers around you. And that's, you could have 1,000 doers, and if you don't have a visionary, they're not doing anything. So your role is a lot more critical than I think you give yourself credit for, and just know that you wouldn't be in those rooms if you weren't supposed to be. I don't care what somebody's bank account says. That's irrelevant. I mean, Steve Jobs was broke at one point, right? So, if you're open to it, I would dust off lesson 6 in thinking and results and just burn that in for a week or something. It's just really all about building that billionaire self-image.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, guys. Well, hopefully you guys enjoy getting into the I actually love it. And Blake, don't worry, we're only like 8 pages in. This is just the first chapter. We're not like halfway through the book. We're just, the idea is to just have it on your nightstand, read some pages, highlight some areas that you want to discuss, and maybe 3-4 weeks from now we'll bring it back up and we'll dig into the content. So it's not too late to catch up.
Right on. Cool. I'm right behind you guys. And something I was actually looking through my copy of Think and Grow Rich, thinking it was in there. What Jeremy mentioned about David Goggins versus Goggins, it's something I just heard listening to the audiobook version of Think and Grow Rich, but it's the 21st century version with a bunch of editors' comments.
Yes.
And it talks about the other self. I'm sure you've read enough Napoleon Hill that you've come across. It's just something I've only recently come across thanks to that audiobook version, but apparently it's a big part of Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil. So pretty cool concept of having sort of 2 versions of yourself. One is sort of this idealized version, and you kind of commune with that version of yourself when you're trying to get the best out of the 2 of you.
Well, it's in a lot of Napoleon Hill's writing, and it's easy. We've all seen this. It's easy to get put in a box or either beaten down, or it's easy to get comfortable. When I was, in engineering and construction, it's easy to kind of just go along one way as sort of the lower version of yourself. But there's always this higher version. Some people call it like conversations with God. There's even books on this, right? Where there is a higher level for all of us. It's just, are we taking time to tap into it? And that's what I love Outwitting the Devil. That book's absolutely amazing. It's really good. So, but most people just don't ponder it. They just see themselves as themselves, and they don't even ponder that higher version. That's a really, really good point.
Yeah, cool. I didn't check that book out for sure.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. So awesome, everybody. Well, thanks for participating in today. Like I said, I love going through the content. I love geeking out on this stuff and looking at it from different angles. So I appreciate you all. Again, if you want to invite people to the Thinking and Results on Monday nights, this could be, friends, family, relatives, people that you think would benefit from going through that. Val posted the link in the chat, and I'm sure my team's going to get some emails out. So we love and appreciate you all. We'll see you guys next week, and be well and
Have a
go.
good week.
Take
Have
care,
a great
bye.
week, everyone.
Thank you.
Guys. Bye.
Everybody.
See ya.